Hello, everyone. It's your boy Terrence here, back with Hollywood Already Did It, and I'm one of the few that instead of going to see the big film like Aladdin, I went to go see a smaller film in Brightburn. So after the jump, I'm going to talk to you about the film from producer James Gunn that I hailed as being one of the hidden gems of May 2019. See you guys after the jump. All right, so as you guys know, this is one of the movies that I was looking forward to this month. So I haven't seen Aladdin. I was out on vacation, so I haven't seen Aladdin. I haven't seen Booksmart. So this is the first one that I've seen. So if you've watched the Hidden Gems of May, this one, Booksmart, and The Sun is Also a Star, which I reviewed earlier, were the films that I kind of wanted to see for this month, and finally got a chance to. So first thing I did when I got a chance to go to the theaters is to go see Brightburn, and it was an interesting flick. So, if you haven't done one of the reviews with us before, this is only my second one on the channel. I'm going to talk about what I liked first, what I didn't like, and then we'll rank it on our ranking scale. So, here are the likes that I liked for Brightburn. Number one, the concept. I mean, obviously, if you've seen the trailers, you know what this is. The concept of this is a what if Superman was evil? I mean, that's pretty much the bare bones concept. If you have an alien baby come from outer space and a family who, for this film, suffers from infertility issues, they've been trying to have a kid, they can't have one. This baby just drops on their doorstep, and so the concept is, what if you raise them as if they're your own child in the small town, and all of a sudden they flip, and instead of using their powers for good, they use their powers for evil. Now, I won't say exactly how everything pays off and how all of this, how much the concept is fleshed out, but that is a big thing that I liked about this movie, and that's what got me into the seats. What got me excited to see this movie was the concept of a superhero gone wrong. Another thing that I really liked was the use of gore. I'm a quasi horror fan. I do enjoy good horror, but I like the use of gore, and I really love the use of the superhero power set with the gore. Like, I like that. That was a cool first time I kind of ever seen anything like that, and it was cool to actually witness that on screen. The third thing that I really enjoyed was the first act of this film. I thought this movie did a good job of taking its time for the first third of the movie, where it set the guidelines of you just doing a shot of books of showing infertility. You immediately know what this family is going through. So you got that set up. You do character development between the husband and the wife. You have a moment with this kid who's sort of awkward, sort of the outcast, sort of a little bit weird, super smart, but weird. And so kids pick on him a little bit. And you spend this time taking your time to establish these characters. And I think, for me, had the movie done more of that before we go hard right to what the film eventually becomes, I think I would have had a more balanced experience at the theater, and I probably would have appreciated this movie a little bit more. I guess off of that, you can tell that that's sort of where my likes end with this movie. So now let's talk about my dislikes, which there are quite a few. I think the biggest issue that I have is that I feel like this movie was all concept, no story. I think what my like is the concept is really great. I don't feel that this movie takes enough time to earn the payoff that they do. And I feel like a lot of the scenes, a lot of the horror elements, a lot of the horror scenes or vignettes that happen, while they look great, aren't earned and feel more like I wrote this visual scene for death without having a narrative or a good narrative to get there. Like, I feel like all the beats that happen, all the horror beats that happen because they wrote that first. And this happens sometimes with action movies too, like Mission Impossible, I know does that. And sometimes you can write around it and get away with it. I don't think this film does a good job of, you want these big set pieces, like, oh, I want this highway sequence where the kid's floating right above in front of the truck with the lights keep going on and off. Great shot. I don't care. It's not earned. Like, I don't think once we flip from going drama, drama, drama to a hard right and becoming this gory horror flick, I don't think the time is taken as much as it was in the first third of the film to do that care and take your time on the back half of the film. And it struggles for me. That's where it really suffers for me. Two, and this also plays a part into my first dislike, but this is to flesh it out a little bit more. I don't care about anybody in this movie. Like I don't care. I don't care about I don't care about the son. I don't care about the parents. I don't care about anyone. The cops. No one in this movie means anything to me. And I think for a movie like this to work, when you have, especially for horror, a lot of the reason why horror works for me is that there is somebody in that movie that I can attach myself to, where I'm either rooting for them or I'm rooting against them even, but I'm having some type of reaction to a type of character, where in this film, I am level across the board. So I am not invested in anyone. I'm just watching things happen. And I think that, for me, is the biggest detriment to this movie. Well, I think there is some cool stuff that happens on screen. I don't care about anybody, and thus, whatever I think about this movie when I leave the theater is gone, because I didn't have anybody that meant something to me where I could feel viscerally some type of reaction to it. And I think when you do genre blending, because I think from, and I don't think there's anything wrong with genre blending, because From Dusk Till Dawn is one of my favorite films ever. But it spends the first act of that movie completely establishing those characters, so that by the time you get to them in the titty twister, you now are in love with them. You expect the family, you respect both the geckos. Where in here, I don't know if there was enough time spent on the first third before we switched to the other style of film, that we've earned a trust or care for anybody. So when that switch happens, whatever was being built up is completely lost, because we didn't spend enough time there. It's like you're going over a cliff, you're going over a cliff, you're going over a cliff, and then you just drop instead of like still staying on that. So that way, if you drop a little bit, you're still level. This one, it just falls apart. Three, there are issues with logic that just don't make sense in this film. The young man is supposed to have a high IQ. It's established in the film that he has a high IQ. So when he makes excuses for why he's been missing or disappearing or not around, they seem like they're coming from a teenager who drinks and smokes weed a lot, as opposed to somebody who has a high IQ. It's like some of these things just don't mesh up. Well, another thing is there's a lot of moments. There's a moment in the movie where our main character says, "I want to take over the world." Like that's his goal, is to take over the world. And he even says to his aunt, who also happens to be the school counselor because there's nobody else around, that when she's kind of like getting information from him about something that may have happened, he refers to himself as being superior to all humans, including her. Basically superior. So with him having that thought, him also already telling the audience that he has that thought about humans, it then leaves me a bit uneasy, or like, what the hell's happening, when in the very next sequence, he seems to be, his justification for doing what he does is based that he doesn't want people to tell his parents, which he's already said he's superior to. So his parents' thoughts and ideations of him shouldn't matter at that point. Like it doesn't make sense. If you feel one way about this, then this shouldn't affect. So it's a lot of things that, again, based on my first dislike, I think they wanted point A to point B to point C to happen and didn't have a good enough or clean enough through line that either I cared about or that made sense with subverting this genre. And I think that's the big thing that this concept was trying to do, in addition to being something different, to like turn the superhero genre on its head. It also should try and say something. Instead, this film does neither. It doesn't really turn the superhero genre on its head, and it doesn't really say anything headier than I think this movie could do. And I felt like the first third of it felt like it was on its way to doing, and then it just stops. And so I think there needed to be a little bit more rinse cycle and filtering out a little bit more thoughts and concepts before we put this out in front of everybody. And my last big thing that I disliked was the tag at the end. Stop it, guys. You guys are being presumptuous as hell, and I hate when people do this. Yes, it's a cool wink, wink, nod, nod, and I love the use of Rooker. Anytime I can see him on screen is great. But it basically puts on forth that in addition to an evil or off the wall Superman, we have an evil or off the wall Aquaman and an evil and off the wall Wonder Woman, which bothers me on twofolds. One, you see how much money this movie made this weekend. There's no sequel necessary or needed for this, and I don't necessarily want to go back to this world because I think once being what they gave us once is enough. But two, it's clear that they brought up Aquaman and Wonder Woman because those are the two that are working for Warner Brothers. So they're like, well, let's kind of latch onto this so that people, when this movie's over with and people are going to talk, like, well, there might be a dark Wonder Woman and a dark Aquaman. Let's stop that. We're not going back to this world. No one needs to see this again. This is a cool one-off. But I think this movie says that while I do want smaller films to be done, I do love that these concepts need to be out there and we need to think outside the box. When we do it, we also need to take the time to flesh it out a little bit more, spend some time with it so that when we put it out on screen, we don't have situations like this where it just feels very, very undercooked. So you can probably tell already by the way that I've been speaking about my likes and dislikes and how one far outweighs the other. But in my ranking system, where do we put this one? Are we saying play it again, Sam? Are we saying once is enough, or are we asking for that time stone to go ahead and rewind time so I can get my life back? And unfortunately for Brightburn, I'm going to need to call in the time stone. I need to erase this one from my brain, guys. I really wanted to like this. This is one of the ones that I looked forward to. The trailer looked good, but when all is said and done, I walked out of that theater, it was like, oh, there was way more promise than payoff. And while I liked a couple of things here and there, as a whole, this movie just fell flat and kind of made me disappointed that I spent an hour and a half watching this movie. So those are my thoughts on Brightburn, but I'm curious to hear what you guys have to think about it, all right? So go ahead and leave your comments in the comments below. If you haven't, go ahead and like, share, subscribe to the channel, ring that bell. First 500 folks here, be a part of the founders of the channel. I'll give somebody something nice for hanging around, letting everybody know about the place, okay? You can find us on Twitter at HollywoodADI. You can hit us up on HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. You can also go listen to our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, anywhere that plays podcasts. This week, while I wasn't on because I was on vacation, my boy Blake and our good friend Zane talked about Aladdin. So if you want to hear about Aladdin, compare it to the original and all that good stuff, you can follow and find that on where podcasts are played, okay? And like always, I got my ticket. You got yours?